Going through these documents that sort of my students were looking at, more in the context of New York, since we're kind of on the edge of getting ready to come up with a new set of guidelines, which will probably lift the moratorium, and then you'll start seeing a lot more development moving essentially up from Pennsylvania now over into New York. But I think a lot of people are also looking at New York and saying, as New York goes, so go other places. And a lot of what the concerns and the questions people have raised, I believe it was Donald Rumsfeld who said there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns. And that's the concern some people have is, are there things that we don't know that we should be paying attention to? And how do we take care of the things we do know about as best and as safely and as responsibly as we can? And that gets me kind of the last point I want to make, which is, I think it's incumbent, it's a challenge upon all of us, regardless of if you live here 5 miles away or in another state, to really think, what is the sort of the future legacy we want to be leaving to our children or our grandchildren? I was reading through some of the ODNR documents last night about sort of the new developments of particularly the Utica oil or gas fields here in eastern Ohio. And ODNR predicts there's about 15 years worth of production in parts of the Marcellus and maybe more in the Uticas. So we need to be thinking, 15 years is not a long-term plan for where we're getting all of our energy and our resources in this state or anywhere else. So how do we go about thinking, okay, we need to keep developing new technologies and new resources for how we're going to keep the lights on, and maybe not with candles as much of an issue, but how do we keep our computers running? How do we keep our vehicles moving? How do we keep our cities going and do it in a way that doesn't cause further degradation of our environment? I grew up in Ohio. I love hunting in these areas. And I grew up hunting around wells all my life. Didn't really think twice about it. But when I see the overflow of processes getting bigger and bigger and bigger, we need to think about how do we manage all of these challenges in sort of the 21st century, as it were, in a way that assures that we have good jobs and we can have better jobs, but we also don't say that jobs should come at the expense of the environment, or the environment should come at the expense of jobs. I think the real challenge for us is how do we continue to make responsible decisions politically, economically, and otherwise, so that the environment is protected as strongly as we can, but we're also making good economic decisions, and we're trying to set, whether it's our local community, the state, or the national level, on a smart energy policy that says, look, our kids are going to have a lot of tough decisions to make when they get into their 30s and 40s. How can we put them in a better position now than maybe we find ourselves in, so that when they have to deal with some of these same challenges, they said, okay, our parents or our grandparents made some good decisions for us then, and maybe were hard decisions, but were important decisions. And so a lot of the fracking process for what I've been doing in my class is trying to get people to think about, how do you evaluate all these questions? The economic questions, the cultural questions, the aesthetic questions, tourism questions, environmental questions, and how do you find that very tense balance where you're saying, look, we're going to have some strong disagreements about what we should or shouldn't be doing on public lands, less so on private lands because it's your land, you get to decide what you want to do. But still, as a community or as a nation, we need to find the best options we can and find the best balance we can. And so what I tried to get my students to understand, and this will be sort of my parting advice to you all, is the more informed we are about what's going on and the more active role we take, whether it's at a local level, regional level, a state level, or federal level, we need to advocate that people in Congress and Washington are making smart policy decisions and are doing them in a way that's responsible and responsive to what we think is important. Because I can't speak for anyone else here, but from what I'm seeing, the people in Congress don't know what they're doing and haven't known what they're doing for a while. And until that changes, we're going to continue to have to deal with what decisions they make, regardless of what party they're involved for. So the more that we can be informed and help push better policies and better practices, the more likely we are to have a more sustainable future, but also one where we don't have to worry about our kids having a poor standard of living, deteriorating quality of life than what we're enjoying now. So the challenge is get informed and get involved, move all of us to a sort of better position. And that's really what I've been trying to do with my students, is teaching them how do you go through, look at these documents, how do you understand the laws, the regulations, the technical aspects, but then how do you also bring that back to what does it mean to me here in the local neighborhood, whether, I used to work at Temple Hill, it's right down the road here, so these issues still definitely have a strong interest in me, even if I don't happen to live just a mile or so down the road. So that's all